Greetings and welcome to another edition by the Lone Road Ranger. And today we're talking about Grenola, Kansas, a small town in southern Kansas, just a beautiful little town. In 1879, the Kansas City, Lawrence, and Southern Kansas Railroad laid tracks through southern Elk County, an equal distance between the two aspiring towns of Grenola and Greenfield. Thus, Grenola was born. The population was 100, of whom there was only one woman, Mrs. Elvin by name. For a time it was a cow town, rowdy some say, though there were no tales to back this up, laying claim to being the largest single cattle shipping point in the United States from 1881 to 1884. Between 1881 and 1884, this town was a major cattle shipping point in the United States. The mural depicts how many longhorn cattle drives went through this part of the country. And with the help of an oil boom that happened in the early 1900s and the Southern Kansas Railroad, the population eventually swelled to between 1,500 in 1920, then dwindled to what it is today. Look at this picture of Grenola in 1900. It looks like it's thriving with stores and buildings just about everywhere. It's very impressive. Although Grenola isn't the size it used to be, they strive to keep the best of everything they have. And I can see that working.
We're in Grenola, Kansas today. Small town.
This is an old town and it's still fairly neat. Even the old buildings aren't that bad. There's a museum right over there, and I'll have to come back when that's open. It's not open right now, it doesn't look like. But it's about a half a mile into town here from the highway, and I'm kind of impressed, really. I really like the brick streets. They're wide, and a team of horses with wagons could easily make a U-turn in them. Take a look at this old house. It's pretty fancy. You can imagine the craftsmanship it took to build something like this back in the day. This is the community building. It has an electronic sign out front telling you what's going on and that they have a storm shelter. Here's a picture of the old bank building in its heyday. And probably did pretty well back then. But then in 2007, it was destroyed by fire. It's still standing there, but very weak looking. At Christmas time, they show their Christmas spirit by putting a Christmas tree right in the middle of the street. And that's really neat. They also have all the other decorations relating to Christmas, which I really like. That's pretty cool. Here's a picture of the old Crazy Cow Cafe. It's no longer in business, but it looked like it would have been a neat place to eat. And here, the old Elta Hotel. That had to be a grand place to stay. Probably highly recommended, I would say. Next to the community building, there's a couple other buildings. Looks like one might have been a restaurant that's no longer that. But here's a United States Post Office for Grenola. Really good shape. Here's the senior citizen building, and I really like this. One of the things I like is they have benches outside where everybody can sit there and relax in the sun and wave at everybody. These streets are all brick. They're in amazingly good shape. Kind of hard to believe that this town has brick everywhere, and they're all still in pretty good shape. The Grenola Historical Society is a non-profit organization located in Grenola, Kansas. The society was established in '84 with the main objective of preserving and showcasing the history of Grenola and the surrounding areas. The museum houses a collection of artifacts, photographs, and documents that tell the story of the town and its people. The museum features exhibits on various topics including agriculture, education, religion, and military history. The collection includes antique farm equipment, vintage clothing, and household items from the 19th and 20th centuries. The Society also has an extensive collection of historical records, including newspapers, maps, and genealogical records. Inside the museum, there's a saddle display. It's probably pretty popular back in the day when the cowboys wandered around town with their spurs on. And then over here is the World War II honor roll. And I really like to look at these things and thank those gentlemen for us not speaking German today. Here's a picture of what I would like to think would be around a 1940s and 1950s dining room. You can just imagine that dining room set probably cost $100 possibly, which today would be $800 probably. This is the independent school in Greenfield Township, and look at the stove right in the middle of this schoolroom. Can you imagine how hot that thing got? But in the summer, no problem, but in the winter, you need to move away from it. This is the old Grenola depot, built in 1879 and serviced by the Santa Fe Railroad, the Southern Kansas Division. Back in the day, everything was the Santa Fe Railroad, but today it's a SKOL line, mainly hauling freight, still going through Grenola. I found this beautiful picture online, so I thought I'd include it, and along with an inset picture of the Methodist Church early on in the history of Grenola. Of course, there's another good one right here. The star set, it almost just baffles me how they can turn pink like that, but they do. Of course, we all know that Kansas is the biggest tornado state in the Union, and this one shows one developing right here, and you can see the tail of it as it's going through. I like these old pictures of schools and school children. These children are dressed pretty well. Now, my dad has one that he had taken when he was real young in a country school, and they were all in overalls, tattered dresses, and so forth. Not very well dressed.
Here's a city library and city hall. And over here across the street, got a nice little playground for the kiddies.
Here's a picture of a furniture store and Mason's drugstore back in the early days, around 1900. I wanted to show you a little bit more about the play area. It's a nice little park with sheltered pavilions and sheltered picnic tables, and still ability to be able to watch children as they play. Here's where I get into talking about the famous and infamous people of each town. Trixie was born in Grenola, Kansas in November of 1870, and she died on February 27, 1955. She began her acting career in the vaudeville stage and later on got into making silent movies, then later on talkies. So she eventually died in 1955 of arthritis and donated all her money to the Flint Ridge Academy in Hollywood. The second famous person from Grenola is Eugene Pallett, who was born in Winfield and began his silent career as an extra and stuntman in 1910 or 11. His first credited appearance was in a Western drama, The Fugitive, in 1913. He worked with D.W. Griffith on such films as Birth of a Nation in 1915 also. He starred as the slender, sword-fighting swashbuckler Aramis in the Douglas Fairbanks 1921 version of The Three Musketeers and appeared in several Laurel and Hardy films. Pallett left Hollywood for the oil fields of Texas in the mid-20s, where he both made and lost a sizable fortune of $140,000, equivalent to $2.4 million in today's dollars. Eventually, he returned to work in films. He passed away on September 3, 1954, and his ashes were buried in the Grenola Greenfield Cemetery. Jake Lewis Hammond was born on June 5, 1873, in Grenola, Kansas. He was an American attorney, oil millionaire, railway owner, and political figure. He had become very wealthy and speculating in oil leases. Jake Hammond met Clarabelle Smith at a store in Lawton, Oklahoma when he was 40 and she was 16, and they began a love affair. Jake eventually made millions on oil speculation and campaigned for election as a Republican National Committeeman. Clara and Jake began having differences, and Jake went to her room at the Randolph Hotel in Ardmore, Oklahoma one evening, where he was shot and eventually died of his wound on November 26, 1920. Clara Beth Smith was tried and found not guilty. Jake's wealth at the time was worth around $200 million. Sarah Smith Hammond was awarded all of it. I want to thank you all for listening to me and watching our videos. You are very important to us. If you like what you're seeing, please like and subscribe, and we'll get some more on there for you real soon. In the meantime, adios.
Hey Pierre, who was that masked man? That, my friend, was the one they call the Lone Road Ranger. Look, he left a silver bullet